Rich husband humiliated his wife in front of everyone when she asked for divorce. "You're nothing without me. Who would want you like this?" But a well-kept secret from years past made him grovel for forgiveness days later. The party hall was impeccably decorated, with lights hanging from the ceiling like stars frozen in time. Evening gowns shimmered beneath the crystal chandeliers, and the conversations, while lively, carried a rehearsed tone typical of high society. Lara, in a black dress that contrasted with her pale skin, stood near the main table, fingers delicately wrapping around a wine glass. However, her eyes did not reflect the party's sparkle. They carried something darker, something deeper. Haitor, her husband, was the center of attention. He gestured confidently, sharing some trivial anecdote that made his friends laugh as if he were a charismatic and unshakable figure. But Lara knew the truth. Every word from Haitor, every laugh around him, felt like a thin curtain hiding something rotten. She watched in silence, as if waiting for the right moment to pull that curtain back and expose what lay behind it. When dinner was served and the waiters began circulating with the plates, Lara stood up. The sound of her heels on the floor echoed louder than it should have, capturing everyone's attention. She didn't need to ask for silence. The hall slowly hushed. Haitor looked at her with curiosity, perhaps thinking it was a clumsy attempt to draw attention. "I have something important to say," Lara began, her voice calm and controlled. "I won't prolong this, so I'll be direct. Haitor, I want a divorce." "Nah." For a moment, the hall was still, as if time had stopped. Then the reactions began. Whispers, exchanged glances, mouths agape in shock. But no reaction was as fierce as Haitor's. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Divorce?" He laughed, but the laughter was forced, filled with disbelief and anger. "You must be joking, Lara. Is this some kind of ridiculous joke?" "Nahain." She met his gaze, unshaken. "It's no joke. I'm firm in my decision." "Nani?" Haitor stepped forward, his expression hardening. "Firm? You think you can just leave me like this? Look around you, Lara. Look at everything you have. Who do you think will want you without me? You have nothing without me." "Manian." The murmurs around them grew louder, but no one dared to intervene. Lara remained still, allowing him to continue, as if knowing that the more he spoke, the more he would reveal his true self. "And frankly, let's be honest here. I cheat on you, yes. I always have. Because you've never been enough, Lara. So, shut that mouth before you humiliate yourself even more." "Nah." A heavy silence fell over the room. Lara took a deep breath, and for the first time, she smiled. Not a smile of satisfaction, but something laden with irony and contained contempt. She stepped toward Haitor, preparing to reclaim her dignity, getting close enough for only him to hear her. "You should be more careful with your secrets, Haitor." Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but there was a certainty in it that made his eyes narrow. "What's coming will teach you what it means to lose." "Me." She stepped away, leaving him paralyzed, his face alternating between anger and something akin to fear. Behind them, the sound of cutlery and glasses discreetly placed on the tables indicated that the audience had absorbed every detail. As Lara walked toward the exit, her heart raced, but she didn't show it. Not now. The battle was just beginning. Why did Lara seem so calm, even in the face of such humiliation? What secret made Haitor, usually so confident, hesitate for a moment? The mansion, usually silent at night, echoed with the hurried footsteps of Haitor. He crossed the office like a caged lion, fury etched on his face. He still wore his dinner suit, his tie loosened and his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. The phrase Lara had whispered wouldn't leave his mind. "You should be more careful with your secrets." "Nah." He grabbed his phone from the desk and dialed a number, his fingers pressing the buttons hard. A male voice answered on the other end of the line. "Vinicius, I need you to investigate something." "Lara." "Now." "No." "My name." "Investigate? What exactly, sir?" "Everything," Haitor shouted, his eyes shining with a mix of panic and rage. "If she has something against me, I want to know what it is. Dig into her past, Her friends, her work, everything. She won't take me down. Imagine. While Haitor plotted his strategies in the office, at the other end of the mansion, the mirror reflected a woman with a calm expression, but her eyes revealed that something deeper was in motion. She picked up her phone and typed a short message. Everything is going as expected. He won't take long to react. Stay alert. Nah. The recipient remained anonymous, but the smile forming on Lara's lips showed that she was already anticipating Haitor's counterattack. The next morning, Haitor launched his campaign. He gathered his closest allies at an exclusive club in the city. Among them were lawyers, businessmen, and even an influential councilman. The objective was clear: to manipulate the narrative before anything could touch him. Lara has lost her mind, he began, with a false note of sadness in his voice. I think she's fragile. Maybe influenced by someone? You all know how much I tried to maintain our marriage. I've always been a good husband, but she wants to destroy everything we've built together. Undone. The men around the table nodded, some casting sympathetic glances. Haitor's network of contacts was strong, and he knew how to use it to his advantage. However, deep down, he was unsettled. It was difficult to predict Lara's moves, and that was what kept him on edge. Sure, here's the translated text. No. Later that week, news began to circulate among the social circles that attended elite parties. Comments about Lara's unbalanced behavior started to emerge. Some mutual friends reported that Haitor had insinuated that she was acting out of revenge, or even jealousy. But Lara, contrary to Haitor's expectations, remained unfazed. She frequented the same environments with a serene and confident demeanor, as if she were above it all. Her silence irritated Haitor more than anything else. On one such occasion, at a more intimate dinner with just a few people, Lara encountered an unexpected figure, Amanda, a young and elegant woman whom Haitor had introduced as a friend years ago. Lara knew exactly who she was and what she represented in the puzzle she was assembling. Lara greeted her with a discreet smile, but Amanda's eyes flickered. Perhaps it was the weight of guilt, or maybe something more. Lara didn't need to press. She knew that the simple eye contact would make Amanda question how much she knew. At the end of the night, Lara left a card with Amanda, handing it over almost casually. No words, just a gesture that said, "Get in touch." Naninoi, antana poktanasio, anteistimanis kaitananta. That night, back at the mansion, Haitor confronted Lara in the hallway. His expression was that of a man on the verge of exploding. Do you think you can get away with this? He growled, blocking her path. I'm going to ruin you, Lara. And when I'm done, no one will remember who you were. You are nothing without me. Tienda. Lara looked at him, arms crossed. You've always underestimated people, Haitor. Especially me. Maybe it's time you discovered what happens when someone stops fearing you. Mea, duadil. He laughed, but it was a hollow laugh, burdened with despair. You think you can beat me? Lara stepped closer, her voice low enough to be just a whisper. I've already won, Haitor. You just haven't realized it yet. Men. She left him standing there in the hallway, with the uncomfortable sensation that something bigger was unfolding. Why did Amanda seem so disturbed by Lara's presence? What was in that card? And how did Lara manage to maintain her composure, even surrounded by such a dangerous game? Haitor didn't sleep that night. He remained in his office, eyes fixed on his computer as the files from Vinicius, the private investigator, slowly loaded. Photos, documents, and records began to appear on the screen. But to his surprise, there was nothing incriminating about Lara. At least, nothing he could use. She's a ghost, he murmured to himself, rubbing his temples. How can there be nothing? No flaws, no errors. He knew Lara wasn't as innocent as she seemed. But his inability to find any compromising information began to eat away at his confidence. She had a secret, he was sure of it. And worse yet, it seemed to be using this secret to dismantle his life, piece by piece. Lara, on the other hand, was 2 moves ahead. The next morning, sitting in a discreet cafe downtown, she met with Amanda. The woman arrived hesitantly, her eyes restless as if expecting Haita to appear at any moment. Lara greeted her with a calm, almost inviting smile. "I knew you would come," Lara said, sliding a cup of coffee toward Amanda. Amanda hesitated before sitting down. "I don't know why I'm here. What do you want from me?" "I want justice," Lara replied bluntly. "And I think you do too." "Nah." Amanda tried to back away, but Lara pressed on. Her voice, though low, carried an intensity that held Amanda in place. "I know what he did to you. I know how he used you, discarded you, and then threatened to ruin your life if you said anything. I understand what that does to a person." "Then, Anisia." Amanda took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "You don't understand. He has power. Friends in places that could destroy my life. I can't fight him." "Nian, what?" "You don't have to fight alone," Lara said, leaning slightly forward. "But what you know could make a difference. Evidence, Amanda. He thinks he's untouchable because he's always had people like you afraid. It's time to change that." "Nah, Wainaini." Amanda fell silent, but her expression said everything. There was something there, something Lara knew could be the key to taking down Haita. Meanwhile, in Haito's office, the cracks began to deepen. One of his investors, alerted by rumors of fraud starting to circulate in the market, reached out demanding explanations. The facade of perfection Haita had cultivated for years was starting to crumble. "These insinuations are ridiculous," he shouted into the phone, trying to maintain composure. But inside, he knew something was wrong. These accusations weren't appearing out of nowhere. Someone was spreading them, and he knew exactly who. Later that night, Haita returned home. He found Lara in the garden, calmly watering the plants as if her life went caught in the midst of a hurricane. He approached, his long shadow stretching over her. "You're playing with fire, Lara," he said, his voice low but laced with threat. She didn't turn around immediately. She kept watering the flowers as if his words didn't reach her. When she finally turned, her eyes met his with a calmness that disarmed him. "You've always been afraid of what you can't control, Haita. And now, you're starting to realize that I've never been under your control. That is you all. You think you're going to destroy me?" He stepped forward, narrowing his eyes. "You think anyone will believe you? I'm Haito Moreira. I have everything I need to take you down before you can make your next move." "Nayane." Lara smiled slightly, almost defiantly. "You should stop worrying about me. To worry about what's coming for you." "Nayane." That same night, Amanda emailed Lara. The attachment contained documents, screenshots of messages, and incriminating audio files. Everything proving Haita's fraudulent schemes and his involvement in illicit negotiations that jeopardized not only his career, but also his freedom. But there was more. A specific audio caught Lara's attention. In it, Haito discussed with Amanda something even darker, how he had manipulated an investor into bankruptcy, destroying not just the man but his entire family. Lara paused the audio and took a deep breath. Now, she had everything she needed. Who was the investor ruined by Haita? Why was this piece so important to Lara? And how would Haita react when he found out that Amanda had turned the tables on him? Haito was crumbling, but he was not the kind of man to accept defeat without a fight. However, the more he tried to contain the chaos around him, the more it seemed that everything was slipping through his fingers. That morning, Haito gathered his team of lawyers in his company's office. The atmosphere was tense, and the men exchanged nervous glances as he paced the room. "I want everything traced," he ordered, slamming his hand on the table. "Emails, bank accounts, calls, anything that connects Lara to these ridiculous accusations that are coming out about me. No matter the cost. I need something to incriminate her before she wrecks me." And one of the lawyers cleared his throat before speaking. "Sir, with all due respect, the evidence that has emerged against you in the last few days, it's solid. We're trying to contain the rumors, but it's hard when—" Haito interrupted with a fist on the table, his eyes furious. "I'm not asking for excuses or explanations. I'm asking for solutions. As the lawyers left one by one, Haita was left alone in the office. The silence was almost deafening, filled only by the sound of his heavy breathing. He felt the pressure mounting, and for the first time in years, uncertainty began to creep in. In the mansion, Lara was in the same office that Haita used to occupy, now calmly analyzing the documents sent by Amanda. The audio about the investor's manipulation was just one of the pieces of evidence she planned to use. The financial fraud case alone was serious, but the blow to that specific investor was something personal. As she read through the reports, a memory surfaced. The man ruined by Haita was no stranger to Lara. He had been a close family friend, someone who had helped her father during difficult times. The bankruptcy not only destroyed his life but also led to his premature death, leaving behind a wife and 2 children in a devastating situation. Lara felt the weight of the memory, but she didn't let the pain overwhelm her. The revenge she sought was not just for herself, but for all the people that Haita had trampled in his quest for power. In the early afternoon, Haita decided to act. He reached out to an old ally, a sensationalist journalist willing to do anything for a good sum of money. During a meeting in a secluded restaurant, Haita slid an envelope stuffed with cash across the table. "I want you to publish a story tomorrow," he said with a cold smile. "Something that destroys Lara's credibility. Use whatever it takes, lies, speculation, anything that makes people doubt her." The journalist hesitated, but the weight of the money in the envelope was convincing. "Consider it done, Mr. Moreira. Her name will be mud by the end of the week." A few hours later, Lara received a warning from a trusted friend in her social circle. "Haita is trying to tarnish your name in the press. Expect something big tomorrow." But Lara didn't seem worried. Instead, she just smiled and replied, "Perfect. He's exactly where I wanted him." The next day, the article was published. Sensationalist headlines flooded social media and digital newspapers. "Vengeful wife tries to destroy tycoon in family crisis." The piece was laden with insinuations about Lara's sanity, and the possibility that she was fabricating accusations to benefit financially in the divorce. The public reaction was immediate, sparking divided opinions. While Haita celebrated the initial victory, a new scandal erupted. An investigative journalist, seemingly motivated by the growing rumors, published a report linking Haita's company to a corruption scheme involving fraudulent public contracts. The article detailed precise information, including leaked documents. Haita read the article with trembling hands. Every detail pointed to him, and although it was a direct reflection of the evidence sent anonymously by Lara, he still couldn't prove that she was behind it. He hurled the tablet against the wall, the device shattering into pieces. "That woman. She's destroying me." That night, Haita returned home earlier than usual, determined to confront Lara. He found her in the garden, as always, watering the plants in a near-meditative silence. He approached her furiously, holding the newspaper with the corruption headline. "Do you think you can keep playing dirty?" he shouted. "Do you think you're untouchable?" Lara set the watering can aside and turned to him, a serene look on her face. "I'm just revealing the truth, Haita. You're the one digging yourself deeper with every move." He stepped forward, fists clenched, but stopped a few paces from her. His breath was heavy, and for the first time, there was something more in his eyes. Fear. "You can't destroy me," he said, his voice breaking. "You'll fall with me, and then no one will win." Lara took a step closer, now nearer to him. "Who said I only want to destroy you, Haita? Maybe I just want everyone to see. Be who you really are." Mama. What will Haita do now that he realizes Lara is always one step ahead? And what does she still keep that could finish him for good? Haita felt the weight of the last few weeks like a hot iron pressing against his chest. His position of power and the illusion of control he had always nurtured were crumbling rapidly. The corruption scandal had not only shaken his reputation but was beginning to directly affect his business. Investors had pulled out, contracts were frozen, and friends who once fawned over him now avoided his company. But Haito did not consider himself defeated. He believed he still had cards to play, even if they were increasingly scarce. Lara, for her part, did not slow down. Earlier that week, a confidential package had been sent directly to the local prosecutor's office, containing all the evidence provided by Amanda and other documents Lara had gathered over the years. Haito was at the center of a fraud network, and Lara knew that justice would take time, but it would be inevitable. She had also initiated a quieter movement, one that did not involve the law but would hit Haito at his most vulnerable point, his reputation. In discreet conversations with some influential society wives, Lara began to share parts of her life story with Haito. The manipulations, the emotional abuses, and how he had built his empire on lies and destruction. He deceived everyone, not just me, she said, her voice calm but charged with sincerity. But now, the truth is coming to light. And when that happens, it would be better to be on the right side. The message spread like wildfire. The elite, known for their love of gossip and scandal, now watched Haito's downfall with a mix of fascination and horror. Meanwhile, Haito decided to make his last move. He hired a more aggressive investigator to track all of Lara's recent movements. That afternoon, he received a dossier with photos and detailed reports. Among the images, one caught his eye: Lara entering a small office in the downtown area, where she stayed for hours. The report indicated she was meeting with an investigative journalist, the same one who had published the article on corruption. Haito smiled to himself. Finally, a concrete lead, he thought. But the smile was short-lived. At the bottom of the dossier, there was something unexpected. A reference to a name he recognized well: Henrique Vasconcelos, the investor he had destroyed years ago in a cruel scheme to acquire his company. The connection between Henrique and Lara was explicit. He was her godfather. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Everything made sense now. Lara was moving her pieces for something much bigger than a simple divorce. She was avenging Henrique's downfall and death. That night, Haito confronted Lara directly, his face twisted with rage and concern. Here's the translated text in English. He found her in the mansion's office, where she was calmly organizing papers as if nothing was happening. So that was it all along, he growled, slamming the door shut behind him. This isn't about you, or our marriage, or that ridiculous divorce. It's about Henrique. Nah, yeah. Lara looked up with a feigned expression of surprise. You finally connected the dots? Congratulations, Haito. I always knew you were smarter than you seemed. Nah. He stepped closer, his hands shaking. You want to destroy everything I've built over something that happened years ago? He was just a loser, a weak man who didn't know how to play the game. Lara did not back down. She stood up, facing him with a terrifying calmness. He was an honest man. And you destroyed him. You stole his life and left his family in misery. This isn't a game, Haito. It never was. Nail. For a moment, Haito looked lost. He knew there were no excuses he could make, no lies he could use to manipulate her. Lara wasn't like the others he had deceived. She wasn't afraid of him. Do you think you can win? He whispered, almost desperately. Do you think you'll come out of this unscathed? I still have power, Lara. I still have allies. Nanshente dianshe, ashano, onakesa, anshesh, enchingin, oh. Lara smiled slightly. Maybe you do, but the net is closing in. And when it closes completely, there won't be anyone left to save you. There's none. As Haito struggled to find a way to turn the situation around, Lara continued to move her pieces. By the end of that week, a press conference was scheduled. Not by her, but by the investigative journalist she was collaborating with. The news was made public. Haito Moreira was formally being investigated by the prosecutor's office for corruption, money laundering, and corporate fraud. Images of documents and leaked audios accompanied the report, making it impossible for Haito to deny his connection to the crimes. In the mansion's living room, Haito watched the report on television, his face pale and his mouth dry. He knew it was the end. But what troubled him the most was Lara's serene expression as she walked by him, as if she already knew the outcome before the battle even began. What else had Lara not revealed? And how would Haita, now cornered, react to the weight of his impending downfall? The echo of Haita's boots resonated on the cold marble of the mansion's foyer as he wandered aimlessly, like a wounded animal. The report on television, still replaying snippets of the accusations against him, felt like a death sentence being announced. Each leaked detail was so precise that it was clear Lara had been planning his downfall for a long time, and he had never noticed. For the first time in his life, Haita felt the weight of defeat. His company was on the brink of collapse. Authorities were investigating him, and the people who had once revered him now avoided even mentioning his name. Only Lara remained, his enigmatic wife, who, at that moment, seemed more powerful than ever. Sure, Nin. Here is the translated text. No. Your opponent he had already faced. In the late afternoon, while Haita drank alone in his office, Lara entered quietly. She appeared calm, dressed simply, yet her presence filled the space. Without asking for permission, she sat in the chair opposite him, crossing her legs and staring at him with a mixture of compassion and resolve. Did you know, Haito, that power is not eternal, she said, breaking the silence. For years, you believed you were invincible, that you could do anything without consequences. But the truth is that no one escapes the past. Me. Why did you do this? He asked, his voice hoarse, almost pleading. Why? Wasn't it enough to end our marriage? Did you have to destroy everything? Lara leaned forward, her eyes fixed on his. This was never about destroying you, Haito. It was about justice. You forgot who I am. Henrique was more than my godfather. He was like a father to me. You took his life, ruined his family, and forced me to watch, powerless, as it happened. Years ago, when I found out what you did, I swore that one day you would pay. None. He closed his eyes, shaking his head. I gave you everything, Lara. You had luxury, status, everything you could ever want. Isinanai. Do you think that's all that matters? Lara laughed. But there was a bitter edge to her voice. You underestimated me, Haito. You always thought I was a decorative piece, someone who depended on you for everything. But I built my own strength, silently, while you were busy thinking you were untouchable. Anishchante. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of arriving cars. Haito stood up abruptly, looking out the window. It was a group of men in suits, prosecutors accompanied by police officers. The net is closing, Lara said, standing calmly. They're here for you. And this time, there will be no bribery, no excuses. Nihana. Haito turned to her, his face pale and eyes wide. You can't let this happen. Please, you won, Lara. You don't have to go this far. I'll do whatever you want. I beg you. Nan. She watched him for a long moment, her eyes assessing every word he had spoken. Then she stepped closer, so near that he could feel her breath. Your begging doesn't change what you did, she said, in a cold tone. You destroyed lives, thinking you would never face the consequences. Now, it's time to pay for everything. Manin. Lara took a step back and left the office. The agents entered minutes later, presenting an arrest warrant. Defeated and unable to react, Haita was taken away in handcuffs while the few mansion employees watched in silence. The following week, Haita's life completely unraveled. His arrest was widely reported, and more victims of his schemes began to come forward. His allies abandoned him, and the accumulated evidence was enough to condemn him to years in prison. Lara, however, did not celebrate her victory with pomp. She moved on quietly. She lived her life discreetly, refusing interviews and disappearing from the media radar. When Amanda, Haito's former lover, asked why she didn't take the opportunity to expose herself, Lara simply replied, "True victory isn't in being applauded. It's in finding peace." Months later, Lara visited Henrique's widow. They sat on a simple porch, sipping tea while the woman's grandchildren played in the garden. He would be proud of you, the widow said, holding Lara's hand. Henrique always said you had a strength no one could see. Na. Lara smiled, her eyes misty. I just hope he can rest in peace now. Nens. As Lara walked away from that house, the sun shone on the horizon, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. Ending, Haitor paid for his crimes and lost everything he valued most, while Lara moved on, finally finding the peace she had long sought. Justice was served, but more importantly, Lara regained control of her life and her story.